Take a look at this. A Frontier cabin, 5 for $4? Now that's what I'm talking about.
That sounds cool, Mooch, but we're recording, bro.
Oh. Sorry about that. And welcome back to At the Moochies, where I'm your host, Mike Farucci, and I review everything. For this episode, it's going to be a little bit different. We're going to review a movie. And this, we're going to discuss about Oliver Stone's 1986 classic, Platoon. And just a reminder for all you folks out there, I still have the same rating systems. 5 meatballs means it's awesome. 1 meatball means it's awful. Here's a quick disclaimer though. I'm not necessarily reviewing the story itself, but more so critiquing the accuracies and inaccuracies that were noticed by myself and my other Vietnam reenactor friends. You got it? Good? Ready? Yeah? Alright. Now to start off on a positive note, what I personally enjoyed about Platoon was, for a movie of its era back in the 80s, it had a very grounded feel to it. Whereas other films took other artistic liberties. Now with Oliver Stone's personal account, he wrote a lot of that while he was on boots on the ground. And so we did finally get to see that sort of realistic portrayal of what day-to-day life was for a grunt back in 1967, early 1968. Along with that, the positives on the gear in particular, which they had borrowed, rented from the Filipino Army back when it was filmed, they have most of the correct gear, stemming from their M1 helmets, to their 3rd pattern uniforms, to their subdued and colored patches of the 25th Infantry Division, aka Tropic Lightning. So I would say that it was mostly accurate to what you'd see. You probably could take a picture of that movie and still say, hey, it looked pretty convincing. Along with having the correct M16A1 rifles, having the M60 machine gun, even for the NVA gear, you had the correct gear from their rucksacks to their uniforms to even their pith helmets. From a reenactor's point of view, that would be something that I would expect if I was on set to be supplied with that sort of gear so we can portray it as best as possible. And also, on top of that, of all that, would have to be the atmosphere, because it really does feel like you're in Vietnam. Now granted, like I already mentioned, they filmed in the Philippines, which is of course a tropical environment, which is perfect for any Vietnam reenactment. And I will have to say, that was my very first impression when I saw the film. Just seeing that made me feel like, wow, I was there. Just the whole feel of it, the thick, triple canopy jungles. And then you have how the fire bases are set up. They were, perfectly made for what it was meant to represent, along with the villages that they went into. Now, for as mostly accurate it is, unfortunately there are a couple of notable inaccuracies. Starting off with the USGIs, which I understood, like I mentioned earlier, they were supplied by the Filipino Army, so what they had gotten were ARVN rucksacks, which is not correct for a USGI to carry into the field. Also, the 2 squad leaders, Sergeant Elias and Sergeant Barnes, were carrying M653 carbines, which weren't introduced until after the war. Now, if you wanted to be technically correct, they could have had XM177s, but they still could have gotten away with an M16A1. Also, a couple of things that were noted too were that even though it was represented in 1967, but I felt like there was a couple of late war trends that seemed to have seeped through into the film. Now, granted, they were artistic liberties, however, still not acceptable for an authentic film or representation, such as the peace symbols, the protest attitude, particularly the weed smoking. I don't think it would have been that prevalent for frontline troops just yet. Now, I understand the shotgun riding scene with Elias and Taylor. I know that was based off a 1971 newsreel from CBS. And that, like I said, would not have been acceptable for 1967. Now, granted, it's a film, liberties, I get it. Even the helmet graffiti, I wasn't particularly fond of, because I feel like that influenced a lot of us, growing up watching this film, and some of us who didn't get involved with reenacting, to feel like, hey, I can get away with this, which still, either way, isn't acceptable. Overall, Platoon is an awesome film either way, and I would recommend anybody to watch it. Now, it's not perfect, but you know what? It's certainly better than a lot of other Vietnam films that came out during its era. So for that, I give it 4 meatballs out of 5. And this has been another episode of At the Moochies. I'm your host, Mike Farucci, and I'll see you around. Where's my coat? And don't forget to like and subscribe. And don't forget to like and subscribe.
You're off camera. Your head's off camera. Hang on. You gotta lean in.
Overall, for what it's worth, 1986 Platoon. The only reason, the accuracies and inaccuracies of what was represented in the film as a Vietnam reenactor. All right, I gotta do a better one.
Yeah. But